I tested 47 Nintendo Switch 1 games on the Nintendo Switch 2. So I went through my entire collection of games on the Nintendo Switch 1 that I have physically as well as digitally and tested them out, because the Switch 2, with the improved performance that it has, is making a lot of these games that did not get Switch 2 updates run even better. So I wanted to go through, see which games are running better or which games are having issues on the Switch 2. And as we go through, I will be adding them to this tier list, showing if they have a big upgrade on the Switch 2, if they have no significant change, or if they need a Nintendo Switch 2 update or upgrade. And there is a caveat. I did leave out some games that were specifically designed for the Nintendo Switch, those being Nintendo first-party games, as well as games like Monster Hunter Rise that already ran phenomenally on the system. I also left off certain games that were indie developed, such as things like Call to the Lamb, with simpler art styles that already ran well on the original Switch 1. And obviously there are a lot more games on the Switch 1 that I did not test because I do not personally own them. So let me know in the comments below what you guys have tested and what's running better on the Nintendo Switch 1. And also be sure to leave a like and sub, because this video took forever to get all the footage for. So let's get into it. So first up, we have Dying Light on the Nintendo Switch, and this game actually has quite a bit of an improvement. I'm a huge fan of Dying Light. I think it's a fun game with the zombies and the parkour. It's just a really unique formula, and the parkour is so much fun in this game. And this actually is running quite a bit better with, it looks like, improved resolution. Obviously, the textures are still going to look the same as they have, and that's going to go the same for all of these games on this list, because of the fact that if they don't get an update, it's tough for a lot of the textures to be improved in any significant way. But it still looks really nice, and the frame rate is much more stable than it was previously, with no dips noticed while I was playing the game. The frame rate's stable while running and fighting, so it just is an overall improved experience, and one that I really am excited to continue playing on the Nintendo Switch 2. So with Dying Light, I'm going to put it in the big upgrade category. I would put it in the needs an upgrade category. However, I'm hoping to see Dying Light 2, or maybe even Dying Light the Beast, make its way over to the Nintendo Switch 2. So I think that for what this game is on the Switch, it's perfectly fine on Switch 2. The next games are ones that I really am excited are seeing improvements, and that's the Batman trilogy on the Nintendo Switch. The Batman trilogy notoriously was a poor performing port on the Nintendo Switch 1. Batman Arkham Asylum we'll talk about first. This was playable on the Switch 1, but it had a ton of performance issues, a lot of stuttering and things of that nature that just make it less than ideal to play on that system. And that's coming from a PS3 game. So it was a little disappointing seeing how poorly Batman Arkham Asylum ran, but on the Switch 2, good lord, this game is so much better. Faster load times are here. The game is running smooth as butter. It's an actually enjoyable experience because there's none of that stuttering that was making combat in situations like that feel just not good on the original system. So Batman Arkham Asylum, I'm gonna say, is in the big upgrade category. Now, Arkham City, which is my favorite of the series, Batman Arkham City is running flawlessly. I absolutely love how good this is running on the system. This is my favorite Batman game, and like I said, it is just perfect on this system. The flight works great, running around the world works great, the fights are smooth. I am really impressed, and I'm glad they're running well, because like I said earlier, these are PlayStation 3 and Xbox 360 games, Batman Arkham Asylum and Batman Arkham City, so these needed to be running well to begin with on the previous Switch, and they just had issues, but those issues have since been resolved. So this one's also going to go into the big upgrade category. Now, Batman Arkham Knight. Good lord, this game was not good on the Switch 1. It was pretty much unplayable because of the frame rate issues that the game had, and I can safely say that this issue has been resolved on the Switch 2. You can't get away from the muddy textures and just the poor issues graphically that this game has on the Switch, because there is no actual update improving it for the Switch 2, but the game is looking better because it is more stable frame rate. You're sitting at a comfortable 30 frames a second. The game is just so much more enjoyable, and the only spot that I actually noticed any issues and dips were in the Batmobile, but they were pretty few and far between, so I didn't think there was near as many problems as far as the Batmobile was concerned, where you were seeing the most dips on the original Switch version. It's so much better on the Switch 2. It's actually an enjoyable experience. So I would recommend Batman actually on the Switch 2. All of the Batman games work and are playable and are fun on the Switch 2. However, Batman Arkham Knight, I'm still going to put in the needs an upgrade category. I want to see better textures. I want to see better resolution. I want everything improved in this particular port because of how big this game is. I would just like to see it get improved on the Switch too. Maybe even include Batman Arkham Origins that didn't make its way over to the Switch in some sort of upgrade, like combo deal. That would be really awesome. So hopefully we see an upgrade for that particular game, but it does run and play well. Moving on to the Borderlands games, and originally when I started this video, I was just going to play the most recent entry in the franchise because that would be the most graphically intense, and that would be the one that would pretty much dictate how the rest of the series was going to perform on the Switch too. But the Borderlands franchise made me realize I actually have to playtest all of these games because one of these games has a lot of problems. So starting with Borderlands 1, this was a fantastic Switch 1 port to begin with. It had so many things going for it. It just ran nice and smooth, and I will say that it did have lower frame rate than on other platforms, but with the stylized graphics of Borderlands, the game still looked and played great, and that can be said for Borderlands 2 as well as Borderlands the Presequel. All of those work fantastically on the Switch 1, but it's looking even better on the Nintendo Switch 2. There are improved load times. They're still capped at 30 FPS, but it is smooth. But there's no significant change noticed on Borderlands 1, and the same can be said for Borderlands 2 and Borderlands the Presequel. All of those are capped at 30 FPS, but they still run and look great on the Nintendo Switch 2. So again, while they are in the no change category, they are running nice and smooth, and I would recommend picking those up. Now, Borderlands 3 is a different beast entirely. This game had issues on the Nintendo Switch 1. It was a serviceable port, but it wasn't a fantastic port. The main issues on the Switch 1 were things like frame rate and things of that nature, but the Switch 2 improves the frame rate. It actually has an uncapped frame rate. You can get 60 FPS on Borderlands 3. However, I mentioned that one of these Borderlands games was having issues, and that game is Borderlands 3. For whatever reason, running this game on the Switch 2 is causing a lot of problems for Borderlands. There is a lighting effect issue where like the screen practically goes dark and for no reason at all. It's very, very confusing why this is happening. But on top of that, there's also screen tearing happening. Part of the screen will go black on occasion, and there's this weird like rainbow glitch effect that's happening when you enter the menus. This game is actually having a lot of problems on the Switch 2, but they have already pulled the game from the eShop at the time of recording this, and they are actively working to fix this. They're already aware of the issues, and like I said, you can't buy it on the eShop right now because of those issues. Luckily, I already had this game, so I didn't have to worry about that. I could just re-download it and test this out. But this game is having a lot of problems on the Nintendo Switch 2. So right now, I would say hold off on Borderlands 3. The rest of them are fine, but Borderlands 3 is having issues. And personally, I'm going to put it in the needs and upgrade category because I would like to see this game improved on the Nintendo Switch 2 because Borderlands 4 is coming later this year for the system. It'd be a good way to get people into the series with the latest entry and get people excited for the new one. So I'm going to put it in the needs and upgrade, especially because of the issues that it's having on the Switch 2. Next up is The Outer Worlds, and this game had issues on the Switch 1. This was not a good port. There was muddy textures, there was tons of pop-in, the game had poor frame rate. It was a very, very poor port over to the Nintendo Switch. This is better on the Nintendo Switch 2, I will say that. The frame rate is much more stable, but as I've said with other games, the textures are not improved in any significant way on the Outer Worlds on the Switch 2, which still leads to a muddy experience, and there is so much pop-in still happening with certain objects, especially the foliage just showing up out of nowhere. While this is a much more playable and enjoyable experience on the Switch 2, this game is definitely going to go in the needs and upgrade category, especially because The Outer Worlds 2 is coming later this year, and I would expect that The Outer Worlds 2 actually makes its way over to the Nintendo Switch 2. So an upgrade for the original game would be a great way to get people in and excited for the next game that is probably coming over to the Nintendo Switch 2. Next up, we have Skyrim, and this was a great port to begin with. Skyrim was always fantastic on the Nintendo Switch, but the game still was lower FPS and had a couple issues here and there, especially as the game continued to grow and we got the extended edition that added DLC content and downloadable content in the form of like certain mods and stuff. All of that is available in Skyrim on the Nintendo Switch, and on the Switch 2, the game still runs and plays fine. I just didn't notice any significant frame changes at all. The game was just running about as expected on the Switch in general. There was no improved resolution, there was no improved frame rate. So for me, I still think this game is fine. I think it's a no change. Don't necessarily think Skyrim needs an upgrade, but I will say we will likely get an upgrade because of the fact that Bethesda's just known for remaking Skyrim on every system that's ever been made. So Skyrim will likely get some form of upgrade later down the road, and I'm hoping that we also get the Oblivion remaster ported over to the Switch too. Next up, we have the Assassin's Creed games. There's the Ezio collection, there's the Assassin's Creed 3 port, there is Assassin's Creed Black Flag and Rogue that made their way over, and all of these games ran really, really well on the original Switch. They were fantastic games on the Switch, and they continue to be fantastic games on the Nintendo Switch too. I already played most of these games through on my Nintendo Switch, and they were great experiences. Assassin's Creed 3 and Assassin's Creed Black Flag being just great ports in general. All of these have no significant change on the Nintendo Switch 2. All of them seem to be capped at 30 FPS, and while it is a little disappointing that they didn't get some form of upgrade as far as the frame rate goes, they still are great additions to the Switch library and work perfectly in the state that they're in. So I would still recommend picking these particular games up. All of them: Assassin's Creed 2, Brotherhood, Revelations, Assassin's Creed 3, Assassin's Creed Rogue, and where's Black Flag? It's not on my list, but Assassin's Creed there it is, Black Flag. All of those are in the no change category, but they are nice games to have on the Switch because they already worked really well on Switch 1. Next up are the Bioshock games, and these are actually very impressive on the Nintendo Switch 2. I'm very happy with some of the stuff that's happening on the Switch 2. So, first off, Bioshock 1 looks and runs great on the Switch 2. It seems that it's locked at 30 FPS when you are docked. However, handheld appears to be running at a higher frame rate for Bioshock specifically. And the same can be said for Bioshock 2. Smooth seems to be locked at 30 FPS when docked, but it looks like it's running so much smoother and faster when in handheld mode. So both of those games are looking very nice and stable on the Nintendo Switch 2. So we're going to put those in the big upgrade categories because there's no significant issues that I noticed with those particular games. Now, Bioshock Infinite is the one that really stepped up compared to the other two because this one is running at 60 FPS on the Switch 2. It looks beautiful, it's running beautiful, and I will say there are still some texture issues I noticed along the way, especially in the early segments when there's a lot of stuff loading in. It looked like there was just some like fuzzy, weird, granular textures going on, but all in all, this game runs super nice on the Switch 2. We're going to put this one in the big upgrade category as well. The Bioshock collection is very nice on the Switch 2. Dark Souls Remastered on the Switch was a serviceable port. It had some issues, but overall the port was pretty stable. But on the Switch 2, the frame rate is significantly better. This game is running so much more smoothly. It appears it is locked at 30 FPS. I don't really see any significant frame rate improvements, but it is more stable than it was on the original Switch, which is a good thing. And it's just a nice game in general. It's a good game. I had fun playing Dark Souls originally on my Switch, and it's running even better on the Switch 2. So I will say that this one got a big upgrade, even though it didn't get that 60 FPS bump that I was hoping for. It is working so much better on this system. Nier Automata. This game was a good Switch game to begin with. It already ran fantastically on the original Nintendo Switch, but it did have some issues as far as some blurry textures here and there, but this game is running significantly better on the Switch 2. The load times are significantly improved. The resolution appears to be a bit better. It is smooth as freaking butter. It just runs so well. The frame rate appears to be improved as well, but this game is currently listed as unsupported on the Nintendo Switch 2, and you can't buy it on the eShop right now. However, there are rumors of a Switch 2 official port coming soon, so some form of upgrade is going to likely be available later down the road for this particular game. But if you can pick it up on the Switch 1 with a physical copy, it is going to be worth your while because the game already runs well and you'll probably get it cheaper than whatever Switch 2 version is coming later down the line. So I would recommend this one on the Switch 1 if you can find it and get your hands on it, because there is a big upgrade there. I do want to note that there has been reports of some issues with this particular game on the Switch 2. I didn't encounter any, but I've seen reports on Reddit and other places that this game has some sort of glitches on the Switch 2, which is likely why it's listed as unsupported. Now, Overwatch is an interesting one on this list because when Overwatch originally came to the Nintendo Switch, it was a code in a box. I didn't know it was a code in a box, and I bought the code in a box, which really disappointed me, but I have a physical box of Overwatch, so I figured I'd include it on this list. This game is free now, so you're able to just pick it up. It's Overwatch 2 now. You're able to just pick it up and play it, but I will say there was no real change for this particular game. It seems like the frame rate is a bit more stable. However, it's locked at 30 FPS, which is a little disappointing considering the fact this is a competitive game. I just really didn't like seeing that this game was still locked at that 30 FPS and wasn't running as smooth as you were hoping it would for a competitive game. So for me personally, I'm gonna throw Overwatch into the needs a Switch 2 upgrade category, but I'd imagine because this is a free game that is getting continued support, that Blizzard is actively working on some sort of upgrade for the Switch 2 for this particular game. I'd imagine very soon we will have an upgrade for this particular game, which is good. I am very excited to see how Overwatch looks and runs once we get a proper Switch 2 version, but the current version that is available in the eShop, it's serviceable. You can play Overwatch there, but it's not as good as you were hoping for a game as competitive as Overwatch. Next up is The Witcher 3, which is one of the most impressive ports that we saw on the Nintendo Switch. The game is massive. The entire game was on the cartridge. There was no additional download required. You know, very CDPR of them to get all that on there. But the game had issues. There were frame rate issues, there was blurry textures, there was a lot of stuff going on that just wasn't fantastic about that port. It was a playable port, and if it was the only option available to you, it was a good way to play The Witcher, but it wasn't the best version of The Witcher. Now, I will say, the Switch 2 play experience for The Witcher 3 is so nice. It is very, very solid. The resolution seems to be improved. The blurry textures are much better on the Switch 2 when playing this particular game, and the frame rate is so much more stable. It is locked at 30 FPS, and the game is just a better experience all around, and it is a solid way to play The Witcher 3. However, I am still going to put this game in a needs an upgrade category. I would love to see this game get an improvement, even if it's still locked at 30 FPS. Improving those textures and improving that resolution would make this just a so much more enjoyable experience on the Switch 2. And with the rumors that there are some sort of DLC coming for The Witcher 3 a little bit later before The Witcher 4 comes out, I really hope that this game gets some sort of upgrade so that way we can experience that DLC if it comes to fruition in a much more improved way on the Switch 2. Next up is Minecraft, and Minecraft is great on the Switch 2. On the Switch 1, it was fine. It ran at like 30 FPS and it was a playable game. However, it's smooth as butter on the Switch 2. It's up to 60 FPS. It is the premier way to play Minecraft on the Switch, and it is fantastic. However, despite it getting a big upgrade, and I could put it in that category, I'm still going to say I'd like to see an upgrade for Minecraft for the Switch 2 because we now have mouse controls. I would love to see Minecraft on this system with mouse controls. That would be absolutely phenomenal, and it would just improve the game dramatically. So I'm still going to put this in the needs an upgrade category. In the realm of Minecraft, we have Minecraft Dungeons, and this game is one that I really enjoy on the Switch. I played it all the way through on the Switch, all the DLC and everything I played on the Switch, but I will say that this particular game had issues on the Switch, especially with some of those DLC locations that they added along the way. This game had some frame issues and some stutteriness that did occur, but on the Switch 2, it appears that all of these frame dips and stutteriness were improved. The game is running much more stably and smoothly. It seems like it's locked at 30 FPS, but the game overall is improved, and you don't really need that 60 FPS for this style of game. Because it is a single player non-competitive game, I'm perfectly fine with 30 FPS. Just having those frame issues resolved is a much better experience for this particular game. So I'm going to put this in the big upgrade category. Worth picking up if you're interested in Minecraft Dungeons for the Switch 2. It is a very nice looking game. In the same vein of dungeon crawling that Minecraft Dungeons is, we're going to talk about Diablo 3, which was a very nice port on the Switch 1. I played a lot of Diablo 3 on the Switch 1, and I can safely say that the Switch 2 version seems to be running even better. It looks like 60 FPS, and it's just playing fantastically. I enjoyed what I saw of Diablo 3 on the Nintendo Switch 2, which really makes me hope we get Diablo 4 on the Nintendo Switch 2. That would be a fantastic addition to the library. But if you want to play Diablo on the Switch 2 and you don't already have it, Diablo 3 is a really nice game on the system, and I'm going to put it in the big upgrade category. It is just running great. I have no issues, no quarrels with this. It's just playing perfectly. Risk of Rain 2 is a fantastic indie game on this list. I really enjoy Risk of Rain, and I played it quite a bit on my Switch 1. It did, however, have some frame issues, and it was running at a lower frame rate on that system. However, the Switch 2 version is running at a crisp 60 frames a second, which greatly improves this game. It looks fantastic, it's running fantastic, and I love it. The game still takes a second to actually boot up, but loading into the game, once you get through all the menus and stuff, it is near instant. Also, I can safely say that based on the performance of this game, I kept it on my system, and most of the other games that I play tested on this list, I actually took off my system. I just deleted it off after I play tested them to see what the improvements were. Risk of Rain I actually kept because it's running so much better that I can actually see myself diving back in and playing some Risk of Rain 2 on this. So I'm going to put it in the big upgrade category. This is running great on the Switch 2. Sonic Frontiers is one that I enjoyed on the Switch 1, but it had a lot of issues. The game ran surprisingly well, but there was so much pop-in and texture issues along the way in Sonic Frontiers that it was a lesser experience compared to something like the PS5 version or anything like that. But the Switch 2 version seems to be running a bit better. However, the pop-in is still crazy. It is just all over the place. There's stuff just appearing out of nowhere in this game, and I'm going to put this game in the needs and upgrade category. Unfortunately, if they do decide to upgrade this game, Sega hates $10 upgrades, so we'll probably have to pay full price for this game to come to Nintendo Switch 2, because that's what they did with Sonic X Shadow Generations. So it's a little disappointing to have to put this game in the needs and upgrade category. It is a playable game on the Switch with the version that's currently available, but the pop-in is just super annoying. So I still think this game needs an upgrade, but if you don't want to, if they decide to upgrade this game down the road and you don't want to pay full price, the Switch 1 version does work just fine. Now we have all the Resident Evil games that are on the Switch, and these aren't the Resident Evil games that are on the cloud like Resident Evil 7, 8, 2, Remake, and all those. Those aren't the ones we're talking about. We're talking about the original Resident Evil games that were ported over to the Switch, and I can safely say that all of these are running fantastically. I tested Resident Evil 0, Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil 5, and Resident Evil 6, and all of these are running perfectly. They're running at 60 frames a second, and they are fantastic on this hardware. I genuinely am considering playing through 4, 5, and 6 on the Switch after testing them, because they just ran so well, and I've yet to actually play those Resident Evil games. I've already played Resident Evil 1, and I have no real interest in playing Resident Evil 0 at this time, but 4, 5, and 6, I'm really keen on actually playing through on the Switch after seeing how much better they're playing on the Switch 2. So all of the Resident Evil games are going to go into the big upgrade category. Let's see here. Resident Evil 6 is there, Resident Evil 0, where's the rest of them? Resident Evil 4 and Resident Evil 5. All big upgrades. They are fantastic on this hardware, and I believe they're on sale. You can catch a lot of these games on sale right now, so keep your eye out on some of these big upgrade options. If you can catch them on sale, definitely worth having. In the same vein of horror that Resident Evil is, we're going to talk about Dead by Daylight on the Nintendo Switch. And Dead by Daylight, while it was a pretty poor port on the Nintendo Switch, it was a playable experience, and I played quite a bit of Dead by Daylight on my Switch. And now, on the Switch 2, the game is running better. It is more consistent with the frame rate that you're getting, and it's just a smoother experience. I was having no issues as Survivor dodging the killer and being able to loop the killer around the map. I was having no problems at all with that, which makes for a much better experience playing this game. However, I'm going to put this game in the needs and upgrade category. I could definitely see this game already being worked on for a Switch 2 version because of the continued nature of updates and stuff that are coming to Dead by Daylight. I already predict that this game is going to get a Switch 2 upgrade in some form or another, but as of right now, it's a playable experience on the Switch 2. It's not a perfect version of this game. There are still obviously texture issues and just animation issues in general for this version. But if you like Dead by Daylight and you're looking for a handheld way to play the game, the current version that is on the Switch 2 works just fine. It is a way to farm blood points, and because of the cross progression, it is synced to the rest of your account. So you're able to play it handheld on the Switch 2 if you're so interested and continue getting progress toward your other accounts. Like, I played this game on Steam personally, but I kept this game on my Switch 2 because I was like, this plays fine. I can just play this game to earn blood points and just have some fun with it on the Switch 2. So I kept it on my system. It's a serviceable game at this moment, but again, and I'd imagine that this game is going to get a Switch 2 upgrade down the road. So I'm going to still keep it in the needs and upgrade category, but it is much improved over the Switch version. Wolfenstein 2 and Wolfenstein Youngblood. These games were already just impressive on the Switch 1 with performance. They are even better on the Switch 2. It seems like both of these games are just running smooth as butter with no real issues on the Switch 2. Both of these games are fantastic shooters. If you're looking for single player experience, Wolfenstein 2 is a really good game to pick up. If you're looking for a more co-op experience and you have a friend to play with, Wolfenstein Youngblood is really nice on the Switch 2. Both of these games looking crisp on the Switch 2. Would recommend picking those up. They're going to go in the big upgrade category. Neon White is another indie game that I have on this list, and I played through this entire game on the Switch 1 and had a great time with it. But the game did have lower FPS on the Switch 1 version, which for a game that is as fast-paced and as quick moving as Neon White was a little disappointing. But I can safely say that on the Switch 2, this game has improved frame rate. It's running at 60 FPS and is smooth as butter. So if you're interested in a game like Neon White that is just a fast-paced, arcadey style run and gun game, Neon White is an awesome pickup on the Switch 2. I highly recommend this game. I enjoyed it immensely when I played it through on the Switch 1, and it's even better on the Switch 2. This game is smooth as can be, and I love it. So it's in the big upgrade category for sure for the Switch 2. I really recommend Neon White, especially if you can catch it on sale. Going back into the horror genre, we have Outlast 1 and Outlast 2 on the Switch 1, which honestly both were great ports on the Switch 1. I really enjoyed playing through Outlast and the Whistleblower DLC on the Switch 1. They ran perfectly there, and they're still fantastic ports on the Switch 2. I noticed no real significant change as far as how they perform because they already performed really well on the Switch 1, but both Outlast and Outlast 2 are great games to add to your library on the Switch 2 if you haven't played them already, and I'm really hoping that we get the Outlast Trials ported over to the Switch 2 based on how these games are doing. They are just running super well, and I love the Outlast Trials. I think it's a fantastic co-op game, and I'd really love to see that game get added to the Nintendo Switch 2's library. So hopefully with how good these games were on the Switch, they decide to bring over the Outlast Trials. Jurassic World Evolution is a game that ran just fine on the original Switch. It is the Jurassic Park builder type game. They never brought over the second game, which I found interesting to the Nintendo Switch, but they have the first game, and this game was solid. I enjoyed playing this game on my Switch. However, when I booted it up on the Nintendo Switch 2, the game was running much smoother at a 60 frames per second increase, which was very nice. I did notice though, and I don't know if this is something to do with the HDR function on the Switch 2, but it happened handheld as well. This game just had a lot of weird colors happening. I don't know what it was. It was like super saturated, which I just don't know what was going on with this particular game on the system. It was incredibly saturated and was kind of an eyesore as a result, despite the fact this game was running so much better and the textures look better. It just, with the weird high saturation that this game has, it was just, it's visually unappealing, and I would recommend waiting to see if this game gets some sort of improvement or upgrade, or maybe they even bring the other game to the Switch too. I'm gonna put this one in, and it needs an upgrade or it needs a patch or something to fix that, because it's just an eyesore right now with whatever weird graphical thing is happening with the colors. In the same world of Jurassic Park, we're gonna talk about Lego Jurassic World. This game is great. It just runs great. It's a Lego game. I was kind of expecting this game to run great on the Switch 2. It already ran fine on the Switch 1, but it's looking like it's running better on the Switch 2. It's just a good game. I enjoy this game. I'm gonna put it in the big upgrade category. I don't think it needs an upgrade. It plays just fine the way it is. I like this particular game. It's a good game. I like the Lego games quite a bit, and I'm a huge Jurassic Park fan, Jurassic Park being my favorite movie of all time. So for me, this game's big upgrade, worth picking up, especially because it's pretty cheap right now to pick up and has a lot of content available for you. So this one, it's nice to see it's improved on the Nintendo Switch 2, and I'm not shocked that it is improved. Disney Dreamlight Valley is one that was playable on the Switch, but had a lot of frame issues. Now, I will say the load times are improved on the Switch 2 with this particular game, but the frame rate, while seeming more stable, still has some noticeable glitches and dips. So as despite the fact this game is working better on the Switch 2 than it was on the Switch 1, I'm still going to put it in a needs an upgrade category because it's just not as crisp as I was hoping for, especially for this like life sim city builder thing. You would expect it to run quite a bit better than what it is on the Switch 2. So definitely still needs a patch or an upgrade for the Switch 2 to make this game even better, but it is an improved experience compared to what it was on the Switch. Gundam Breaker 4 was already a great game on the Switch. It was fantastic. It ran way better than it had any right running on the original Switch. And I will safely say that there is no real improvement on the Switch 2 version. Playing this on my Switch 2, I didn't notice any frame improvements. The game ran pretty much the exact same as it did on the original Switch. And I can put this in the no change category and still recommend this game if you like mech games or Gundam games in general. This game's awesome, and building your Gundam out and being able to customize and the level of detail that this game has is really, really solid. And with how well it ran on Switch, it's an easy one for me to recommend. Hey, pick this one up on the Switch 2 because it's just a fantastic game, despite the fact there was no real improvement when playing this game on the new hardware. Need for Speed Hot Pursuit is another racing game you could pick up on your Switch if you're so interested. And on the Switch 2, it ran great. I didn't notice, I couldn't really tell because of, the game being so fast paced and with the like motion blur and stuff that's going on. It was tough to tell exactly what frame rate this game was getting on the Switch 2, but it runs just fine. It runs fantastic. There was no noticeable glitches or graphical issues when I played this game on the Switch 2. So I'm gonna say this is a big improvement. Honestly, I couldn't tell if there was like a 60 FPS. Again, it has motion blur and your vehicle's moving so fast. It was tough to tell where exactly we were landing as far as FPS, but it runs smooth as can be, and it's one I'd recommend if you're looking for a Need for Speed game or some sort of racing game outside of Mario Kart. This one's a solid pickup. Biomutant was a serviceable port on the Nintendo Switch 1. It was ugly as can be, and it just had a lot of texture issues on the Switch 1, but it still ran pretty well. It ran well enough that you could enjoy the game on the Switch 1. And I can safely say on the Switch 2, the frame rate is improved, but the graphics that this game has on the Switch, maybe there's a resolution bump because it looks a little less muddy on the Switch 2, but there's still just a lot of texture issues playing this game on the Switch 2. I'm going to put this in a needs an upgrade category. However, I don't think the Biomutant is likely going to get any form of upgrade. It's just one of those games that I don't think we're ever going to see a sequel of. It wasn't super well received. Didn't do a whole lot new that really made it stand out compared to other games that are similar like Breath of the Wild and stuff. However, this game plays fine at 60 FPS on the Switch 2, and if you're looking for a game like Breath of the Wild that has that open world nature, Biomutant is a solid pickup, and I do enjoy playing the game on my Switch 2 despite the lower resolution textures and just the kind of muddiness that this game does have. It's still an enjoyable experience. Kingdom Come Deliverance is pretty impressive as far as upgrades go on the Switch 2. Much like The Witcher, this game had a lot of issues on the Switch 1 where it was just low frame rate and poor resolution. The Switch 2 actually seems to have improved the resolution a fair bit on this particular game, and the game is running at a much more consistent frame rate on the Switch 2. But I will say, I'm still going to put this in a needs an upgrade category simply because of the fact that there's a lot of pop-in still. And despite it being an overall smoother experience, I think if they gave some sort of upgrade, whether it be a free upgrade or a $10 upgrade on the Switch 2, that would be so nice because of the fact that Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 could potentially come to the Nintendo Switch 2. So improving the original game that is already on the Switch would be really nice. So I'm going to put this one in a needs an upgrade category because despite it being much better, I still think improving it would just make this an all-around better game on the Switch. The last game on this list is another Crab's Treasure. This is that crab indie game, Souls-like, where you're running through the ocean and fighting stuff. It's very Dark Souls-like, and it was a fun indie game, but on the Switch 1, it had some stuttery issues, which is kind of a pain in a game like this where you need to be kind of precise and be able to take down enemies easily. The frame rate has been significantly improved on the Switch 2, so that is a bonus for this particular game. I feel like I have way more control over the character, and I'm able to make quicker adjustments to be able to actually take down enemies more effectively. So I will say that this is a much better experience on the Nintendo Switch 2 and is definitely worth picking up if you're into indie games like this or into Souls-like. This is a really solid one to add to your library. But that is it for my list, guys. I hope you all enjoyed. Again, there was a lot of testing done here, so a like, comment, and subscription to the channel would be fantastic because it helps me out, helps the video out, and helps the channel out immensely. And like, this was just a ton of work. This was so much downloading updates, downloading games, and testing stuff out. There was a lot of time put into this video, so all support on this would be super appreciated. And again, leave a comment and let me know if you've tested other games that I did not talk about here and how they are running on the Nintendo Switch 2. Let me know all that in the comments below. But again, that is it for this video. Hope you all enjoyed. Be sure to check out the Discord where people over there hanging out and talking Nintendo Switch 2 stuff. But until next time, peace.